vegan now 1 year, 8 months. I am getting scared in terms of organic versus conventional. Now, I know we are told go organic, go organic, go organic. But sometimes when we want the sweet purple potatoes and they say, well, it's done conventionally. What is your take on the conventional foods that we sometimes have to cook? And I don't know if you may know, or maybe another doctor that's coming up on the conference, when these farmers, these naughty farmers, use their pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers, does it go into the vegetable or fruit?
Mm-hmm. Okay. The person that can answer this question is a wonderful plant-based doctor who is also a regenerative farmer in New Jersey named Dr. Ron Weiss. And I know I interviewed him on this, and I know that interview is on my YouTube page. So I don't know the full answer to your question, but I want to tell you a few things. I don't eat a 100% organic diet. And it's not because I'm trying to prove a point or that I can't afford to do it. I live in the real world and I go to people's houses and not right now, but I traveled for years. And so while I do think organic is better when you can afford it and it often tastes better and you're supporting the kind of practices you want to support, I think that when you eat produce, fruits, vegetables, whole grains and legumes, even conventional, it is still much superior than eating processed food and animal products that are organic. So there's a saying that I've often heard, which is do your best and bless the rest. And, it's interesting because I just interviewed a man named Dr. Nathan Bryan, who's a leading expert on nitric oxide. And he was saying that when they tested vegetables from different parts of the countries, that sometimes the conventional ones were better in terms of nitric oxide production. And so we've kind of messed up this planet, like, and so what we've done to the soil, there've been documentaries about that, like Need to Grow. Unless you grow all your own food, you're just going to have to make the best choices. And I would really encourage you to go to Dr. Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org.
Yes. Oh, yes.
He talks about how it's very difficult to be perfect 100% of the time. So you do the best. And I think that when you adopt a plant exclusive diet to any degree and not have the other stuff that's making people sick, you're going to be a far cry ahead. It is very hard to be perfect in an imperfect world, but do your best. And I think that there's always going to be a benefit from eating fruits and vegetables other than ones that are deep fried than not eating them, even if they're conventional and even if they have a little bit of salt on it, because I think that eating plant food is so much more important. But, there's things coming out now where people are growing their own things like hydroponics. And who knows what the future technology will be, but I know that I don't eat 100% organic. And, so far, I'm okay.
And finally, in your career as a chef, have you ever reached that breaking point where you heard a story and you had to stop what you're doing and shed a tear and said, oh, only if. Have you ever had that moment? Because for me, it did.
You mean like somebody that didn't get the information or somebody that did?
I mean, in your career as a chef, because myself, I'm a school teacher, and sometimes we hear the horrific stories as a school teacher. For you as a chef.
Yeah, well, I remember there was a really fun television show on the Food Network, and this was the title. I'm not calling them fat. It was called Two Fat Ladies. And and at least one of them died from that
being big,
and you see a lot of the chefs on the Food Network now, like getting heavier and heavier, like Mario Vitali and Emeril Lagasse. And I think because Emeril, I've always loved his personality, and, he's younger than me. And, so sometimes when I see chefs like that, I'm like, you can still be an amazing chef and make food that will make you better and make the world and the planet better. So, but I don't think chefs want to hear from me, because what? Sugar, fat, and salt sells. I mean, that's what the restaurant business is. That's what the processed food industry is. And so it's going to take a gargantuan change in the way people look at food for this kind of food to be popular with chefs, because a lot of times the chefs really don't like vegans in general because we're so difficult. But I mean, the vegan part they're getting now, but tell them no oil and it's like they look at you like you're from another planet, yes, because that's all they know. It's not their fault. It's like, it's not a doctor's fault that they don't know about nutrition because they're not taught it in medical school. And it's not a chef's fault that they only know how to use sugar, oil, and salt. because I went to culinary school too, and that's what they're teaching.
True. Thanks a mil, Chef.
Thank you.
Thanks a mil.
Thank you.
Okay, great question, Ansley. Now we have Daria. Daria, ask your question.
Hi. Oh, Chef AJ, I watch you all the time.
Oh, thank
Matter of
you.
fact, I listened to you in your regular YouTube show earlier today. That was
Nice.
wonderful.
Now she was inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I'm not that young, so yeah, that was inspiring. I have a question about I'm going to be doing a Mary Mini, and I'm seeing some people all of a sudden, or even they're just doing just potatoes. And I want to get an initial amount of weight off quickly, just for, I guess, motivation. But some of these people that are doing just one starch and nothing else, what are your thoughts on that? And I actually saw someone do just beans, and I'm like, oh no.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, I'm not a fan. And the reason is because temporary weight loss is of no use.
All right.
And
hi, Dr. Delgado. How you doing?
yeah, the problem is that
All right. So
if what you're
looks
doing
like
isn't something you can
set
continue
up.
to do,
Do you have a
results
presentation as well?
I don't know. It sounds like somebody's.
Okay. And your audio quality is very good. Your mic.
Okay, we have somebody not muted, so I just want to make sure she can hear me. Okay. All right. So start again. So Mary's Mini is a little bit different than an all starch diet. So I am personally, again, let me just say this. If what you're doing works for you, then please do it. But I would not recommend somebody do an all starch or one starch diet, because here's the thing, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And to me, anytime you take vegetables out of the diet, that's a mistake. With a Mary's Mini, you're picking one starch and you're picking one vegetable. So at least you're getting vegetables. You learned today that vegetables are almost negligible or negative calorie density. So how are you going to improve a diet of starch and vegetables by taking vegetables out? You see, that makes no sense to me. So I'm not a fan of all starch diets, but I don't mind people doing Mary's Mini. But the thing is, you've got to find a way to eat for you that is sustainable, that we don't have to keep going back to these detoxes and these extreme programs. I showed you photos of the kind of food I eat. It's abundant. It's delicious. I don't have to go do all potatoes and vegetables because I'm eating so much delicious food. I always tell people, do the least restrictive diet that they can do that will give them the results they seek. And so doing all one starch, and I don't think beans is a good idea for the one starch. There have been times where people have to do an elimination diet, and that's a little bit different. But if you're doing it for weight loss or a reset, just do what I'm telling you. Eat to the left of the red line. Don't eat sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt. Why do you need to go that extreme and just do just beans? It doesn't make any sense, and I don't think you can sustain it. So you want to find the diet for you that you can sustain, that's so delicious that you don't want to go off that plan. And I don't know for whom an all-starch diet is going to be sustainable.
Okay, thank you so much. The next one up is Sasha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Can you, I'm going to unmute you. Can you ask your question?
Okay. So my question is regarding people who have medical situations like, say, diabetes and high cholesterol, and they love French fries, not the baked. They want the deep oil French fries like you get in McDonald's. What are your suggestions you can give them to be happy eating the French fries, but not the way they will be using deep frying method, but some other things, whether you do spray or you do air fry? What advice you have for them?
Well, for people like that, one of the things I recommend, I don't know where you live, but there's a place in Santa Rosa called the True North Health Center where people with all kinds of medical conditions, from cancer to diabetes to heart disease to high blood pressure to food addiction to obesity, go, and they undergo a medically supervised water fast or juice fast. And when the people do that, their taste nerves resensitized. It's called neuroadaptation. And when they're done with the fast, and the fast can be as short as a week or as long as 40 days, you feed them something like steamed zucchini and they think they're eating a hot fudge sundae. So when somebody's eating hyperpalatable, high fat, high salt food like that, it's very hard to take that away and say, here, just have these air fries. But if they were willing to undergo a medically supervised fast, then they will neuroadapt so that this food actually tastes good. And that can be a problem for people, especially people that want to do the diet, but then on the weekends go out and have a drink and have rich food and are living in both worlds. But that's, doing some kind of a fast like that's what I would recommend for people that really can't give up these high fat, high calorie foods.
And that's a good suggestion. But say, for example, you were asked to serve French fries, but with the lowest fat that you could make, what method you would choose or recommend?
Well, so the way I make my fries, I have an air fryer. It's called a Breville. And one of the tricks that I use is I cook my potatoes first, because I find that when you cook your potatoes and then refrigerate them, it changes something about the resistant starch so that when I air fry them, they're even crisper. Now, I personally don't use any salt, but a lot of times when people miss the fat, it's what they're missing is the calories, the calorie density. And so someone like that probably would not like a fry without any salt, but they might like an air fry if it has salt on it, if it's crispy. But again, fat is so addictive for so many reasons, and the high caloric density is just one of them. It is hard to get people at first to go from a higher fat diet to a lower fat diet. That's why a lot of people I work with are eating very healthy, but they can't give up the nuts and seeds and nut butters, because remember, the higher the caloric density, the more dopamine. And if you're stressed in life and you're not exercising, you're always going to seek those foods. So unless somebody's willing to deal with why they are so stressed and why they need to have all that dopamine, just giving them a substitute of a lower caloric density, I don't think it's going to work for a lot of people,
So if you don't boil them, but you bake them and then make the fries, would the caloric density be lower, like in boiled?
It's actually, believe it or not, it's not significant, but it's actually a little higher, because when you cook the potato, you're actually taking the water out. So you're actually slightly raising the caloric density. It's not so significant that I would warn people not to have it, but you actually are raising the caloric density when you air fry or when you dehydrate, because you're removing the water.
And similarly, in another starch, for example, white rice, if you love white rice.
I love white rice.
Should you boil it in larger amount of water and drain the water out and reduce the starch content?
I think you're talking about negligible caloric density differences. I eat the microwave Trader Joe's organic white and brown rice. I love that. I like my rice in a rice cooker. I find that is the perfect ratio, because whoever invented rice cookers figured it out that it's foolproof every time. Because I don't think you want to add more water, because then the texture can change when you're adding so much water, right? So I wouldn't worry about those things as much. The things that I tell people is get rid of the animal products, especially the dairy, get rid of the oil. If you can just do those two things, you're really on your way to better health.
So if you don't overcook the rice, but you come to the level that is really cooked and drain it and then leave it so the steam cooks it all, would that be any better?
Yeah, that would be okay. I can't tell you what the caloric density would be, but that would be a certainly okay way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
You enjoy it. Thank you.